want to quickly introduce yourself to start it off?
Sure. I'm Vance Spencer. I'm the founder of Framework. Framework is a crypto VC. We're also, longtime OG Link Marines, Link people. So if you've been in the Discords or Reddits or really kind of any of the channels, you probably know us. But yeah, it's good to be here.
Awesome. Well, as you all know, we're here to talk about GameFi, whether it's a fad or the future. I know Vance thinks that it's the future. So, kind of start off by, we saw kind of a lot of money go into Axie Infinity and a lot of interest kind of peak and go into that game and a lot of excitement, but then we saw it kind of take a nosedive with a lot of other things as of recent. And obviously Axie isn't, the determining factor for the entire sector, but it does kind of make users think, well, is this really a fad? Is this going to go anywhere? And if so, will it change or adjust? And I kind of wanted to pick your brain and see, will we see models like Axie continue, or how will the sector kind of evolve and adapt if it is the future and that isn't the end?
We'll probably see people try it again, but Axie, there is always the tendency with blockchain apps to just financialize it to the nth degree, and Axie is kind of what you get when you go there, all the way to its logical conclusion. It kind of becomes this financial napalm if if it's reflexive up and reflexive down, you can really hurt users, and that's no fun for anyone. But what we see kind of going forward is not so much the DeFi devs building the games, which is kind of symptomatic of Axie. It's more so the traditional free-to-play mobile game developers and really game developers of any kind having a lot of pressure in their industry, which we can talk about, and kind of being forced to come into blockchain because it's the only real place with a lot of energy, a lot of monetization, and a lot of users. And so do I think people will try it again? They will. I don't think that's where the games need to go. But overall, I see a pretty positive prognosis for, we see probably 3,000 or 4,000 pitches a year, and 60 or 70% of those are games now. So there's just going to be enough shots on goal where we're going to figure out what the right permutation of client-server blockchain architecture is, and I think we'll find the winning combination and then just fund whatever works.
For you, with your fund, what kind of games, what kind of things are you seeing in general that you're investing in, or that the fund's investing in, and how does that differ from what's out there right now?
I would say we're more focused on the traditional game developers that are coming into crypto. The crypto developers that are building games, you see those pitches and it's a little suspect, the NFT communities that are trying to build games are can you really pull this off, or is this more of a hopeful? So that's kind of one category. There's the Dark Forest category, which is super cool, where you're basically solving super intense cryptographic puzzles on chain. I just don't think a lot of people are going to like that stuff. Maybe that's where we go eventually. But we're super focused on games that I think, for lack of people will, for lack of a better word, shit on when they come out. It'll be Candy Crush, but the in-game items are NFTs, or Candy Crush, but the virtual currency is tokenized. And people will be that's not really a crypto game, but it's the worst free-to-play game that we see has about 1 million monthly active users. And so that's an order of magnitude larger than the closest blockchain application, and that's ultimately what I want. I just want to onboard people to Ethereum, and they'll use the network on their own time, but the reason they'll come is the game.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I also read that, GameStop is entering the space. I think they just partnered with FTX doing something, and obviously that's adjacent to developers and so on, but have you seen, I guess, these types of entities or these mainstream storefronts that are, obviously trying to bridge the gap between traditional and blockchain, trying to kind of dive into the space even beyond, developers creating those games, but, the companies or the sellers behind those games? How does that kind of weave into this as well?
I mean, big distribution channels, I would say, is the big one, but more so than the kind of GameStops of the world. I don't want to belabor this point, but I want to make this clear why this is interesting. So free-to-play mobile-based game developers, their whole business is based on advertising. And what advertising requires when you're building something in a mobile app store is this thing called IDFA. And IDFA is basically how I can tell, Taylor, if you're playing Candy Crush on your phone, on your iPad, on your laptop, I can target you across all of them and I can reserve you ads. It's just that's where all the analytics comes from. Q4 of last year, Apple removed IDFA from the App Store. So now if you're a free-to-play game developer, you can't really tell who's who, and your targeting sucks as a result, and your monetization gets hurt as a result of that. And so now all of these people basically have no business model. And so they're coming into our industry and kind of being like, what do we do? And I think that is like a very positive thing to have happening because, all these games are going to launch in Q1. So we're going to figure out like what the right permutation of things is. And then once that happens, we're just going to have all those data points and keep funding them. Right now, it's more speculative. Like, did I grow up playing StarCraft and World of Warcraft, all that stuff? Yes. Like, do I think I'm qualified to invest in games right now? TBD. We'll see how good I am. I've been like right on a couple, but yeah, I feel hopeful.
That makes sense for sure. And do you feel like the next generation is kind of used to just, as you mentioned, those online games where, you're already having a currency that's online and buying things that are digital and so on. Do you feel that that kind of goes into play when we're determining, well, is this a long-term thing or is this a short-term interest again? Are we going to just see cycles repeat or is this going to be something that lasts for a while, maybe thinking, oh, well, the next generation is already very comfortable with the idea of something fully online or, magic internet money, as they're already very, very comfortable. Do you think that kind of plays into your mindset or others' mindset when they're thinking that this is something that will stick around?
Yeah, I mean, there's 3 billion people a year who play games. It's the largest consumer market in the world. Anything that becomes cultural comes from being a game. Like all the things that you see on Instagram, Fortnite, Call of Duty, Valorant, like those are the things which are cultural that actually move the needle. It's not like, I do like music NFTs and all that stuff, but like there's just not enough sample size there to really move the needle. And so like by process of elimination, you can kind of determine that like games will be the thing. It's not going to be music, it's not going to be content. E-commerce is probably down the line as well, but like games is like the large and immediately addressable market that we really want. And in terms of who these people are, who the 3 billion people are, they're like close, distant cousins of ours. Like they transact in virtual currency. They buy digital in-game items. They look and feel a lot like crypto native consumers. And they like to like speculate on stuff. They'll buy skins, they'll run tournaments, they'll bet on it. Like if we get these people in, like we're gonna win big. And not just like Framework, the whole industry. Like if we can onboard 50 million more people onto crypto blockchains next year, like that's a huge win.
Do you think that that's like far-reaching, or do you think that that's a realistic?
I mean, the average free-to-play game has like 1 million monthly actives, and so like you onboard 50 of those and you're there, or you have one that hits it out of the park and you're there. Like you don't actually need that many things to go right for this to work, which is kind of why I like it. It's like DeFi, where if you bet big and you're right, you win 1,000x, and if you're wrong, like you lose your money for sure, from our perspective. But it feels asymmetric in a way that not everything does right now. Maybe we can talk about DeFi as well, but like, the DeFi pitches have been down this year. Like we haven't seen as many. Like it feels like there's been consolidation. People have kind of taken over that market. Uniswap is not going anywhere. Compound Aave is not going anywhere. But like all the greenfield, all the decisions that have yet to be made are kind of in gaming, and that's what's so exciting about it.
It's interesting. So do you think that this will kind of remain like a speculative space for a while before it kind of calms down? Because as you mentioned a lot of things that are very gambly sometimes, a little bit. And that's kind of what this space has brought in as of recent, especially with DeFi. We've seen like a lot of speculative finance and a lot of mess.
Yep.
Do you think that at least for the near term, we'll see that in gaming as well, where it's more of just kind of gambling and trying to figure things out before concrete structures come into place? Or like how do you envision it kind of falling out?
Yeah, the G word is kind of like a loaded term, so I can't really talk too much about that. But speculation is always going to be part and parcel of what blockchains do. Blockchains are built for value transfer. They're built for programmable money. Like, of course, people are going to experiment with these things in ways that we don't anticipate. And if you think about Uniswap, it's not like people went to Uniswap to gamble. They went and they wanted to go buy these coins that were like Shiba Inu coin or like, Dogecoin coin and like, speculate on that. Like Shiba Inu coin is the one in the wrong here. It's not Uniswap. And so speculation is part of the industry. It's always going to be here. Will that happen in games? It's probably going to take a different form factor. It won't look like yield farming or stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I would expect some portion of the use case to be speculative, but a lot of it will be kind of like these, at least longer term, I think like economic games, crafting games, GPS-based location games where like, picture like Foursquare, but like it's a game and you can actually own and rent out the property. Those are the things which long term make sense to me. But short term, I think we're just going to see a bunch of free-to-play games launch and bring a ton of users into the space.
That makes sense. Earlier, you talked about as well how developers are kind of attracted to the blockchain itself and the tech itself. Can you talk to, I guess, what in particular is best about blockchain in comparison to other methods, or like what particularly is bringing them to this space?
So there's like 4 things that I kind of get to when I think about why people build on blockchains. The first is just composability. Like you can, and this is like an overused buzzword for a lot of stuff, but like I can go take a stablecoin, put it into my lending protocol. I can write an insurance company 100 lines of code, a bank, and 50 lines of code. Like it's very easy to build on all the work that people have done before. And it's all open source. So that's kind of the first one. The second one is just like tokens as a new design space. Like we've never been able to incentivize people, organize people, govern systems like this before, and that's super powerful. The third is just like this is like the world stage of basically computer science right now. Like if you're a kid in India or if you're a kid in Africa trying to improve your situation, like what are you going to like launch like an app on your local app store with your local phone and try to get people to use it? You can do that, or you can launch it on a network that has 40, 50 million monthly active users like ETH, where it has all of these financial primitives and TVL and people willing to experiment with things. And like that's what's really powerful about just I wouldn't call it like the censorship resistance. It's just like the world stage of everything, and that's a really important concept. And then the fourth thing I would say is just like there's always a place, if you look at the history of the internet and the history of just like digital open source software development, there's always like the fringes, the margins of like society where things are happening that are important. And for whatever reason, that's crypto. Like all of the most important questions of today, like freedom of speech, should we be free to really own our money and transact with it? Like, all the Ukraine stuff, the Tornado Cash stuff, like those questions are being asked and answered by blockchains. And that has drawn just like this really groundswell of developer interest towards it, which is, what you really want.
In addition to developer interest, to bridge the gap, I guess, between like Joe Normie and, those who are very used to, crypto systems or blockchain, how do you think, how does that come into play when we're talking about like adoption of GameFi? Like how much do we need, I guess, further to bridge that gap so people feel comfortable like using this tech or being onboarded, or because as of now it's pretty difficult, or it could be pretty intimidating. Grandma usually can't use it very easily, unfortunately. So how does that come into play when we're talking about like long-term adoption of something like this?
Yeah, I think the important thing is like to think about is, it seems like we have like all the religion and canon of blockchain set right now, and like it's developed over time immemorial, and it'll be like this forever. But the reality is that's not really the case. Like when I signed up for my Coinbase account in like 2012 or whenever it was, like it was Bitcoin. Like that was the thing. That was where we based all of our kind of dogma on and how we were going to develop. And then like for a while I was into Ripple, and then it was like Ethereum, and now like Ethereum has kind of like established itself as the long-term place where you probably want to be building. And so what you should keep in mind is like right now it's ETH and DeFi. DeFi is infrastructure. It's a means to an end. People are not coming into crypto to use DeFi. They're coming into crypto to use games, and they're going to trade on the DeFi exchange because everything on blockchains has some sort of value capture, value transfer, programmability built into it. And so in a year from now, it's possible that the gamers outnumber the DeFi people like me who kind of like grew up in this ecosystem. But that's okay. Like the richness of that, different type of people will add to the industry. And yeah, like, people liked NFTs more than they liked fungible tokens because there was a picture. They could realize something through that and rationalize it. Games are just going to be like that on steroids, where you have like a whole world built around actually using something on chain. Like when my grandma asked, like, what should I use or what should I do? I'm like, maybe you should go like trade on this derivatives exchange or like, do something like that. Like you really want people to actually have something that you're proud to show them that they can use. And I think we're getting towards that area really quickly.
That makes sense. Do you see anything beyond, obviously Ethereum is probably the most used blockchain period because of the applications and so on, but do you see like there's Solana, there's other emerging chains? Do you see interest in that when you're, I guess, assessing pitches, or is it primarily Ethereum based pitches right now, or like is it a mix, or is it not really one specific focus? Like what are you seeing?
Most of the pitches we see are L2 pitches. There's people that are building on ETH L1, but I think like if you want to build a game that needs like 100,000 users to be able to use it
Right.
concurrently. Like you can't really build out on an ETH L1 right now. There will be a time in the future where you probably can, but the whole thesis of ETH is fleshing out with this idea of like 1,000 L2s. And like if you're an app that does well on the Optimism or the Arbitrum L2, like maybe you'll go launch your own L2 in time. And like, people will verticalize and own their own, virtual machine and execution environments, and like that'll be part of their business model. So I think that's where we kind of see most of the pitches. Things like Solana, I actually think are legit. Like if I had to kind of think about 3 smart contract platforms that we're interested in, it would be probably like ETH, Solana, and like, this is going to sound ridiculous, but like BNB. And like the theory there is not as much based on like the utility or the developer environments in the other 2 blockchains. It's just based on like the strongman effect. Like you have, SBF, pushing Sol, you have CZ pushing BNB. There's large institutions behind them. They're able to funnel users towards them. They're able to copy and paste like the open source projects that work. The other chains just don't seem to have the wherewithal to do that. And so I'm pretty bearish on everything outside of that. But ETH is, the thing that I identify with the most.
When you're looking at these pitches too, like what specifically you talked to like certain things earlier about certain pitches you get, but like are there any examples of things that were like very like surprising to you, things that you're most excited about when you are assessing things that make you so bullish on this space, like that are beyond like the axes or like things that we haven't seen before? Like is there any examples that come to mind?
Yeah, the ones that come to mind are like we met with this team from, or they used to be at Riot. They're now starting their own game, and like Riot, like apparently like really does not like crypto stuff, and like these people are kind of like heretics for even wanting to play around with it, and like it's kind of like this Shakespearean tragedy where like they had to leave because like they had to go pursue their passion or whatever, and like seeing that is really cool because they realize that there's something here, there's something powerful, like. There will be a next generation of gaming studios that are built on crypto rails. Like I feel like that's an inevitability, and so seeing that love and desire of crypto, like I definitely have it within me, but like seeing it in people who don't have the same context is really inspiring. The DeFi founders, I continue to be really excited about. They're changing. Some of them are kind of becoming regulated DeFi, now with added regulation, and some of them are becoming just like overseas fi people where that's kind of the lifestyle they choose to live, but there's going to be a bunch of parallel paths in terms of regulated finance, decentralized finance, where games fit in that, there's certainly no short of inspiration that I get from the founders. I think just seeing the courage of them to go off and like chase it is like the coolest thing for me.
Makes sense. And I guess when you're assessing things, that regulation isn't a fear or anything when you're thinking like long term about this space in particular. I mean, of course, we've seen regulators get upset about obviously about certain hacks, about certain things, and they go on tangents about certain things that have happened, and kind of invoking the fear of what has happened, in their speeches and the hearings that we see. Do you have any concern about that when you're assessing what to invest in or what to focus on, specifically, I guess, with GameFi?
Yeah, with GameFi, I think like there's like alphabet soup of regulators. Like there's the SEC, there's the CFTC, there's the FCC, there's like the Consumer Protection Board, which exists in each state. Like the gaming companies are kind of like the most sensitive to not the securities or the commodities stuff. It's like more of like gaming, gambling, how does this work? Like what are the limits, what are the lines? But like our perspective is like you can figure it out. Like you can be in compliance and actually run this the way you want.
Right.
And kind of like any excuse to that is like just laziness in my opinion. We're gonna have to get some of this regulated. Like that's just gonna be how it works. And I think that'll be better for the industry. We'll also be able to have DeFi and everything like that will still exist, but we just need to be mature about, it's all going to be there, and there's going to be different approaches.
Once there's like an actual framework with like clear rules, that will probably be helpful as well.
Right.
Yeah,
we don't know what the framework is right now. We know what the enforcement actions are, but it's harder to judge where you should go by reading court cases versus like clear rules that are laid out.
Very up in the air.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think we'll see like the Riots of the world coming around, or do you think we'll see companies that you're seeing now kind of grow and step to that plate or do you think we'll have both? Like, how do you foresee the space kind of clearing out or building out?
I don't know a ton about Riot. I know that they, all the game studios right now have kind of like segmented themselves into like, we love crypto or like, we'll never ever have anything to do with it.
Right.
For the ones that don't want to have anything to do with it, or really even the ones that love it, like I grew up in my career, I worked for Netflix for like 5 years, I worked in corporate development. It is so hard to turn a tech company around and do something that is not in their DNA. And like, they'll hire like executives, and these executives will spend like 6 months whiteboarding it out, and then like another 6 months like planning it out, and then it's like 2 years later and nothing's done. I think that's kind of the prognosis for all the traditional gaming companies that are not moving aggressively towards this space right now, is that they just miss it. They backpedal, try to cover their ground over time, but I really do think there's going to be these like crypto native gaming studios that are built, both in the US. There will be like equity-based gaming studios in the US that look and feel like Activision or Blizzard. And then you're going to have like these overseas GameFi protocols, I would call them, that look more like FTX and Binance, where they've used their native token to like rocket fuel their way to the top and fund their initiatives and go after customers. And like there will be like there will be an SBF of gaming for sure. There will be a CZ of gaming for sure. Just don't know how it's going to play out.
Well,
hard to tell right now.
I wish we all knew how it was going to play out.
That would be helpful.
We would make a lot of money. When you're seeing these pitches, and it's probably exciting because you see and you hear so many experiences from people all across the world, as you mentioned, like making a living off of the financial aspect of the games. And obviously, hopefully, the space will evolve past that as well, and there'll be different games for different types of people and different types of desires. But I guess do you have like any thoughts on that aspect of it, where it was kind of a source of income for a lot of people that wouldn't normally have certain opportunities, or or kind of using it as as a source of income that to support their families? It's pretty wild to see all of that.
I know I don't know if anybody here has seen the Axie Infinity kind of like Philippines video where all these people are making money from the game, and it's like kind of this like We Are the World type story about how like tokens and developing economies can come together and create something very valuable. I think that is a little bit of like a misnomer, and looking back on 2021, that's probably one that we'd want to have back in terms of like promoting it that heavily. And it just became, financial napalm, like I've said before, for a lot of people. And I'm sure the Ronin Bridge hack also didn't help, where, the people who could probably least afford to lose this money lost all of it. And so I think there's generally things that we need to do better on. But I think the bright side is it's not going to be play to earn in the future. It's probably going to be play and earn, where, the game has to be fun, it has to be engaging, you have to want to do this. But when I grew up playing WoW, I would sell my account. I would sell different things that were associated with my account, and I would do it anyways, but it was also a source of income. So play to earn, maybe it's play and earn. But yeah, we probably don't want to, have those, I'm not gonna call them cheesy, but it was just too much.
Yeah, it was romanticizing something that
we can
wasn't 100%.
And then, it's no.
That is fair.
Yeah.
For sure. And is there an aspect of the space that you think is undercovered or not noticed yet, that you think is going to become something that's very prominent? Obviously, you mentioned play and earn, might be something, but are there other aspects of the space that you feel maybe people aren't noticing yet, but will become something that's very massive or very used every day?
Yep. What do I think is going to become massive and used every day? I just think games are going to be gigantic, and I keep telling people this, and I keep kind of getting the same look of sure, whenever those come out, just let us know. But there's just going to be all these games are launching in Q1. We're going to find out what the right mixture of everything is. We're going to fund a lot of them. They're going to bring more users than we've ever had on the blockchains, and blockchains will change as a result. There's a chance that you're talking about DeFi in a year and nobody knows what you're talking about. It's just yep, and there's going to be these moments where it feels like it's all anybody is doing. When Steppen took off, it was holy shit, we're walking earn, let's go. And that was the thing. And now it's going to be something else. But my strong hypothesis is that all the games that launch in Q1, we're going to find a handful that work, and those are going to be just gigantic. So it's a little bit of a non-answer, but I just feel confident in the games.
Well, it's hard to pick, but I figured maybe I'd see if you were seeing anything that's particularly interesting. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else that that you're seeing in the investment wise beyond gaming that you feel as strongly about, or do you really feel that gaming is kind of the sector now that will bring the most people in and will be the most prominent, at least in the near term?
I think gaming is probably the one that's the most prominent in the near term. DeFi is super levered to the cycle, and basically what that means is if the price of ETH rose 2x tomorrow, the fundamentals of DeFi would be 2x as good. And so like for DeFi, kind of what is happening there is like the overseas FI founders are going overseas, the regulated finance founders are getting regulated. There's also kind of like this third category of like people investing heavily, and we're one of them in India, Brazil, and Southeast Asia. Like just the infrastructure needs to exist to pull these people online. And so, those two, like gaming and DeFi, which are like our specialties, why we like them is they're very tactical. We can build playbooks around them. We can just dominate the market and run it again. The NFT stuff feels lost to me. Like you talk to these teams and they're like, yep, like we don't, like, what do you think is going to happen? I'm like, I have no idea. Like I don't think PFPs are coming back. I think PFPs are kind of like the ICOs of this cycle. The really far dated one that I think will be big is decentralized wireless. I just don't think Helium did it right. But those are long dated. The consumer categories will matter the most because they'll rebuild the narrative, they'll rebuild the credit, they'll rebuild the interest, and that's gaming and DeFi for what it's worth.
What do you say to people that are really just negative about it, that just don't agree with you at all? That think that this is just the gaming is just another hype cycle like NFTs, and it'll kind of
just don't listen to them, honestly. Like when I was doing this in the last bear market, I started Framework when I was 26. And I was living in Michael's parents' basement, Michael Anderson, my co-founder. So like it was like pretty dire, and we had like put all of our money into the fund. So if it didn't work, like we were really gonna get, just basically eviscerated. And we had no idea what apps would work. We had bet on Chainlink, but we didn't even know who would use it. And so it was really a time of like me being very anxious and like scared about where the future of the industry could go. This time around, like we've got the cash, we've got $400 million. We're ready. We know where the industry is going. We have a playbook. We have a roadmap. I feel very confident, and I just don't spend time listening to people who don't agree with me, but who don't have like a positive perspective. Like if you're just trying to drag me down, I'm just not going to listen to you. But if you ever want to have a constructive discussion about why, I'm always open for that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you learn anything or in the beginning, I guess, in the beginning when you were first starting out, that kind of made you feel particularly like instinctual about games? Is there like lessons that you learned or like certain things that you look for from what you learned when you first started out?
Most of them are founder bets at this point. Like you're just betting on people from Riot and Activision and Blizzard and King, kind of like the big studios, and you're just like, let's see what you do. In Q1, we're gonna have a whole lot more data points, so like that'll be the time to kind of like fully take stock of what's going on and kind of calibrate the strategy. But I mean, the other stuff that we'd like investing in with games is just like infrastructure. Like there's going to be so many gaming studios launching. There's going to be a ton of big SaaS businesses created for just the things that they need. Like game developers have no idea how to build on blockchains. They have no idea what wallets are. They have no idea how to build an NFT exchange if that's what they need. So like, if you're looking for companies to join, I think there's going to be SaaS companies built in gaming that are going to be really, really powerful that specifically service Web3 games.
I know you mentioned this before, but kind of going back to it is like, you'll see when, Q1, we'll see certain ideas come to light, we'll see what works, what doesn't, and the cycle will continue on. Do you think that the unknowing of how blockchains work or the tech or from these people coming in to try to build, they see potential in this space, but they don't really quite get it yet? Do you feel like that's going to be a risk for security or anything of that nature that might be a hindrance to adoption for GameFi?
Probably. There's going to be some big hacks from these gaming companies just because like they don't know what they're doing, and that's kind of like one of the most dangerous vectors. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to shill portfolio companies, but if you need a security solution, Immunify, don't do anything without it. Like it's basically this company that allows you to have all the white hat hackers in the world trying to break your smart contracts, and if they break it, they get paid, and you don't get all your money taken. So I think game developers need that, and I just see a lot of hacks happening. So it's going to be kind of a wild ride, just like DeFi was, but that's what I like about the industry.
Aside from security and maybe just like understanding of adoption, are there any other hurdles that you foresee kind of in the near term, or is it just kind of primarily those two and the rest for you is just like bullish from there?
I think regulation and legislation will just have to get through. I'm like pretty positive on that, frankly. I just think the industry needs it, and like we have now the allies to make something happen in a positive way versus negative. Macro stuff has to be, you know, like at least like cooperative, not like outright bullish. But other than that, I mean, I do think the path is pretty straightforward. I had no idea what the path was last time. I couldn't even think of an app that would use Chainlink, but I knew that there would be them. So you just kind of need to take a long-term perspective.
When you're talking to other investors in the space too, do they have the same mindset, or do they have other concerns or other sectors that they're more interested in than this?
A lot of other investors just feel lost to me, honestly. Like, oh my God, we had this huge run and now it's like nuking, and like, what do we do? It's like, all right, like I've been here before, I know what to do. And yeah, I mean, a lot of the tricks that worked in the last bull market are not going to work for the next one. Like, you can't just like invest in base layers and then, you know, like ruthlessly, you know, just like promote them and do that type of stuff. We need to be building things that like A, we're proud of, B, that real people can use. And I think that's more of where it's going, more of like this consumer app layer versus the base layer. Yeah, I think people are going to have to switch their strategies. It's going to be a lot more consumer going forward. Like, we've already built out the infrastructure that exists.
When do you think we'll see like just everyday consumers using GameFi? Like, do you think it'll be 5 years, less than 5 years? Like, when will it be safe for them?
I would say second half of this year, or of next year. Next year.
Very near term.
Yeah, I've got like a couple like I think contrarian takes that are probably relevant. I think next cycle we probably get to $1 trillion in TVL and DeFi, maybe north of that. I think we'll see $1 billion NFT. I think that'll be very exciting. And I think basically all of the metrics from all of the DEXs and other DeFi protocols will be up about 10x. Like, I really, I'm not very concerned about the industry. Obviously, like, people getting blown out and people losing money in stable coins, like, that's not okay, and we should fix that. But I'm pretty sanguine about the whole situation right now.
Fair.
Yeah.
To wrap up, I guess, is there anything in closing that you want to, you know, make for your bullish case on the long-term take for GameFi?
Yeah. So there's this book called Daemon by Daniel Suarez. I don't know if anybody here has ever read it, but it's like one of the books that got me into crypto, and it's like a sci-fi book about this computer programmer who dies and leaves a program behind, and it becomes this thing called the daemon. And the daemon basically becomes what looks like today as like Ethereum. But instead of it being like purely like Ethereum, it's like this massive online coordination game. And like originally when the book starts, the daemon is very evil, and it's like, you know, killing people, and it's like, you know, wrecking shit, and it's just like not a good scene. But by the end of the book, it's kind of like, you know, the game has run its course. Like, it's become very exciting. It's like actually helping move humanity in the right direction. And I think my longer term hope for games is that like we can coordinate something outside of like a purely governmental context that can actually help build things and, you know, reorient people towards kind of like being a citizen of a network, to like paraphrase Balaji, versus like a state. I think that that's a very powerful idea, and I think the games are kind of the only way that you can onboard people into that like crazy of a vision. And so, yeah, if you haven't read Daemon, I would read it. It certainly was very foundational for me, and I hope that's what the games eventually become, is like something that's like this massive online coordination game that actually helps power, you know, some of society forward.
Something for the greater good.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it. Thank you all.
Sweet.
Yeah.